the initiative in creating brands, creating products that are sustainable, especially when it comes to big companies. And of course, given that consumers have been buffeted by food safety issues in China, whether it's milk that's been tainted with melamine, or hundreds of thousands of pigs being thrown away by farmers, and leading to a sharp decline in pork consumption, it's all about, the conversation is now about whether the food is safe for people to consume or not. All the research seems to suggest that a lot of people want to comply with sustainability norms because it is a legal requirement, because it's a brand image necessity, not so much because it's an integral part of marketing the brand. And that's slightly interesting because, I mean, not just in China, but across Asia, a lot of marketers seem to live under the impression that consumers who are willing to pay a higher price or buy into good causes are in Asia a very small number. In fact, in the study which was done earlier this year, only 4% of CMOs actually believed that in Asia consumers would buy into brands that support good causes. But that is not what consumers are saying. In study after study, and this is one example, it's clear that in countries, especially in China or even in India, a very large percentage of consumers are willing to pay a premium for a product that supports a good cause, and indeed sustainability is a big part of that. In China, 80% of the consumers are saying that, which is a research that's been done by Edelman. And 3 years ago, we did a similar study, and that's exactly what we found, and we called it the green gap, which is the gap between the consumer's desire to have sustainable brands and what the marketplace was offering. And people are ready to act. Again, in that research that we did, we found that almost 70% of the people believed that their efforts did make a difference, and if environmentally friendly products were available at the same price point, they would indeed buy them. And again, the data clearly showed that people are not close to the idea of paying a small premium. About 71% of the consumers are happy to pay a 10% premium if sustainable brands are available for the same, are available at the option when they're out there to buy. And it's not just the research. When you're looking at what is now becoming available in the marketplace, it's clear that sustainable brands and sustainable food brands are on the rise. The number of certifications that were issued to organic products has more than doubled in 4 years, according to the Chinese government data. And sales of those products are increasing by 100% every year. What's also interesting is that those who are producing some of these sustainable and organic products are saying that the market cannot meet almost 30% of the local demand. And I'll talk about where this demand is coming from in a bit. But one of the things that is interesting is that consumers are willing to take things into their own hand because they can't trust what the market is providing them, what the companies are providing them. And the initiatives like creating your own little farm or going to the outskirts of the city and renting a little plot of land from a local farmer and growing your own produce is beginning to become as much as a necessity, as much as a lifestyle statement. And so you have, small firms that are offering expertise in helping people do that. And there are also, again, small and innovative firms which allow you to do things like, rooftop gardening and community gardening. And in case you can't do it yourself, they will send people who will help you grow your own vegetables and fruits. But somehow, this seems to be largely a very small group of companies, or companies that are small, not very big, not very up to scale. Most corporate brands are quite blind to that opportunity. But farmers are realizing it, and they're finding ways to sell directly to consumers. One of the interesting things that I found was that rural tourism in China is growing by leaps and bounds, and that is because people like to travel out during the weekend to buy produce directly from the farmers. Now, there are no guarantees that the crops that they are buying or the fruits or vegetables they are buying directly from the farmer is actually organic or sustainable, but they believe that if they are buying directly from somewhere that's close to nature, it's likely to be fresh, it's likely to be safe. But as I was saying, companies like Green Cow Farm or BioFarm are pretty much out there who are not just growing those crops, but also providing experiences to shoppers or to consumers to get their hands dirty, get a feel for, actually see for themselves the kind of conditions that the crops are being grown under, or the poultry, or the chicken, or the pigs, or the is being raised, or the milk is being produced. Another example here, something that is right here in Shanghai, Tony's Farm. They tell you where the products are being grown, where it's been sourced from. Green Yard Milk. And the owner of Green Yard Milk, the general manager, said that every year the company is selling 90 tons of milk, and clearly the milk that is priced twice any regular supermarket brand cannot, there's not enough of the milk going around. They're always in short supply. Even restaurants are realizing that there is value in taking the sustainable, food to consumers. So whether it's hot pot chains like Chimen Hot Pot, or Green and Safe, the kind of supermarket, or Mahota Farms, you're seeing that the produce is right there, and it's not as if they are addressing only a niche part of the market. And all of them really talk about not just the fact that it's organic, it's safe, but the fact that, and this is the kind of information that aware consumers today are demanding. So, proving that there are no antibiotics, no chemicals in the meat, or the fish comes from sources, again, which are safe, is becoming part of the brand story. So just a few more examples of what's out there. And it's not a few brands, it's not a few products. Yeah. Lohao City, again, a chain of supermarkets in Beijing. And also, the only places, some of the hypermarkets are beginning to get into the act by providing, again, food that is sustainable, that's organic. But from a consumer point of view, it's important, and these supermarkets or hypermarkets realize it, that it's important to establish the credibility of the, of those products. So which is why it's not just the brand being stocked there, but the entire story about where the product is coming from, how it's being grown, the brand story, and also the certifications. I mean, today consumers look for certifications everywhere, and these kind of retail outlets, especially for food brands, think it's very important because they are constantly being scrutinized. So who is buying these organic products? Who's buying sustainable foods today? And it's actually a whole mix of people, those who think that it's safe for their children, young populations, young people who have a bit of, who are both concerned about their own health, but who can afford to buy, families, elderly people who recognize that, they need a certain kind of diet, and the regular foods cannot provide them. Overseas returnees and expats, again, a sizable chunk of the population. And I'll very quickly run you through the kind of numbers just to give you a sense of how big the market for sustainable foods is. White-collar families, I mean, they have high education levels, they've got high disposable incomes, but they are also extremely concerned about the quality of the environment. They are the ones who are being affected by poor air quality, poor water quality, and poor food safety. And they account for almost 40% of the family. Families with young children, which is about 10% of the entire family. And they, again, buy from specialty shops and have today a whole range of access to a whole range of products, which is not just sustainable foods, but also clothing, skincare products, and dairy products. There are families with health issues, as I was referring to, such as those where the elderly who have certain problems, and they need to have healthier and safer forms of foods, along with health food supplements. And especially if these families come from slightly upper and higher income families, they're the ones who are buying organic foods quite regularly. Overseas returnees. Now, these are people who have been exposed to a certain kind of lifestyle. You saw the guy with carrying a Whole Foods bag in the pictures that I showed you. They together, account for about 5% of the entire organic consumer population. Business people from Taiwan and Hong Kong, there are about 1 million of them. They're extremely concerned about the food scandals that have happened in China, and they're very, very keen to buy organic foods and sustainable foods. Then, this was something that I learned, and I didn't know about it before, that government officials receive certain part of their bonus as, as benefits. And in some offices, the government actually provides organic food as a bonus and as vouchers for their employees. Now, the government officials, who number about 10.5 million, are a very influential group of people. So it's not only for themselves, but they potentially, once they start buying organic foods and they start consuming sustainable brands, they will start influencing others in the community. And then there are the young people who are exposed to new ideas and concepts, healthier lifestyles, more environmentally friendly behavior. They're the ones who are choosing to take a bicycle to work and not buy a car. Even though they may not have very high incomes, they try to lead more sustainable lifestyles and are quite happy to pay a bit more for sustainable brands. And then, of course, there are foreigners, again, who are extremely concerned about food safety, but most of them have relatively higher incomes, and they buy what is mostly imported organic and imported sustainable brands, and that's about 7% of the market. So as you realize that people are buying sustainable food brands because of different reasons at different life stages, starting from the little child, the parents of the little child who needs to be fed food that is safe, to 70-year-olds who demand and are now consuming foods that are not just healthy but also safe. So how can your brand start addressing some of these needs? How can you start tapping into these drivers? And again, apart from some of the brands that I showed you earlier, there are very, very few brands in China, especially big brands, that are doing this. So the examples that I'm going to show you are mostly international examples, but it can be quite easy to see how some of them can easily be found. Some of those platforms, some of those ideas can easily be adapted for China. And the first one is to look at your own supply chain and look at, where your food is, that you're packaging up or you're selling fresh, where is it coming from? Because that is very, very important to consumers. They're looking out for not just place of manufacturing or place of production, but also where it's been packaged. And just to give you one example, Long John Silver, again, a producer of poultry and fish products, they have a tagline which says, "Out here, everything is free range," right? So, there are companies that realize that people are willing, they want to know how the chicken or how the fish is being sourced, and this is one example. PepsiCo in India, for example, and most of the bottled water and juice and cola companies are often accused of taking away some of the good water which should be going to poorer communities. But what they've done is they've achieved, and this is part of their global initiative, to achieve country by country positive water balance, which is that they are able to now put back more water into the land than they actually extract. And through that, they are able to provide access to clean water to the communities that they work with. Yeah, so that's just a translation of what was there earlier. By next year, Unilever, who again has a very aggressive sustainability drive worldwide, They aim to have all the tea that they provide under the Lipton brand sourced from Rainforest Alliance certified estates. And by 2020, all of the tea will be sourced sustainably. Yeah. And when companies start, taking initiatives, that is what makes a difference. The important thing to remember is that, certifications like Rainforest Alliance, or the fact that Pepsi is putting back into the groundwater more than what it's taking away, are not just tiny little fine prints on the corporate report or on a sustainability report. The important thing is today consumers are very, very interested in knowing where the things are coming from and the impact their own consumption is having on the environment. So they're looking for that information, and it's important to communicate to them on that all that information. The tuna and cucumber sandwiches at Pret a Manger, the UK food chain, again uses tuna supplies from only sustainable rod and line fisheries from the Maldives. The second area where, again, in the entire sort of marketing and branding story, where you can find, touch points, is how you process that food and the ingredients that go in. And again, there are companies that are taking initiatives. Kraft Foods, part of Mondelez, has taken out artificial preservatives and dyes from its cheese products. Chick-fil, which is a chicken company in the US, has said that it plans to phase out chicken that are fortified and made with antibiotics within 5 years. It's not just free range, but it's also chemical additive-free chicken. Subway, and I'm sure it was a story even within China, was attacked severely for having something that was called bread conditioning. It was a chemical that was used in the food industry, and they were forced to take that out because of huge pressure from a set of activists. So people will find out if there's something wrong in the ingredients that you're using. Today, consumers are finding out and exerting pressure on the brands. Palm oil is an important ingredient in a lot of not just food, but also cosmetic and skincare products. And China is the world's second largest importer of palm oil. And again, this is one area, and that's part of the supply chain, where big companies have signed commitments where they are saying that they will phase out palm oil that is not sustainable. And as you do that, within the supply chains, there are companies that can help you along the journey. And one example is the company Ecolab. Again, global footprint, pretty much here in China. And they can, if you're in the beverage business, they can pretty much help you optimize every aspect of the beverage plant, from processing water to sanitation and conveyor optimization in terms of energy use to treating wastewater. And all that substantially contributes to the improvement in plant sustainability. And this is an example of Levi's jeans, and I don't know if anyone has seen a very, very smart and aggressive campaign that they've been doing about how they've been able to reduce the amount of water that it takes to produce a single pair of blue jeans. It was an astonishing, some hundreds of billions of, more than 100 gallons of water that would go into the production of a single pair of jeans. And not just that, that's in the production side. What they're also encouraging consumers, buyers of their jeans, is to wash their jeans less. Yeah, and that's an interesting way of, approaching it. Yeah. And the next area that, of course, food brands can make a lot of differences is just in packaging and in recycling packaging materials. And again, an example of how you can do that through repeat purchase, and that's a very smart way of building loyalty. If you can take back some of the trash and do something with it, recycle, both the consumer benefits, the environment benefits, and the company can get back some of the materials that it uses within the manufacturing process. While we haven't seen this in China, but if you look at Starbucks responsibility report, they're not only, not only do they have a sort of large recycling solution, but what is very, very simple and easy to do is to implement a front of the store recycling initiative, which is right in front of the store. When you walk out, you can put your, throw away your paper cups or plastic cups, and they find their own way of recycling it and reusing it. It's very simple to do, and as in US and Canada, by next year they will be recycling 100. This is going to be there in every Starbucks store. Plant bottle, again, an initiative which has been adopted by several companies, started by Coke, but now, they've rolled it out to Heinz. And again, I mean, this is clearly an opportunity for companies to come together. If you can't do it yourself, or if you think that it's not, companies, food and beverage companies that are perhaps non-competitive, which is what happens in the case of Coca-Cola and Heinz, can actually, if you wanted to build a recycling plant, you can combine the resources. And similarly, Plant Bottle, the initiative which uses 30% plant-based materials and is totally recyclable, can be rolled across, packaging across companies. Another very interesting example from Europe, which is Carlsberg. We heard about the vending machines in the morning, and this is another vending machine which actually takes back your beer cans or your bottles. And in Denmark, Carlsberg pretty much takes back every can that it sells through these vending machines, reverse vending machines. But what's the benefit to the consumer? There is a benefit, because when you put back your cans or your bottles, you get a voucher, or you get some of your money back, and pretty much 100% of the refillable bottles find their way back to the company for the next batch of beer to be packaged up in. So these are just some examples, some initiatives that companies have done, and I sort of put them to you in the hope that they would stimulate some ideas. And of course, from a communications and from a user experience point of view, the more you get your consumers to engage in doing things that are creative, the more successful you are going to be, the more ideas you would get. Because today, companies and agencies like ourselves have to stop thinking that all the ideas are going to be with us. We have to stop thinking of ourselves as just being creators. We have to start thinking of ourselves being curators of those ideas, which are likely to come from enthusiasts and from people who are passionate about our brands, whether it's food brands or any other brands, because they may come up with ideas that will help your brand become more sustainable. Thank you for your attention.